are live. We are back with the Strength and Philosophy podcast, episode number 22, after a little 3-week hiatus. I gotta say, it really wasn't a 3-week hiatus, it was more of a 2-week hiatus. Jess and I actually shot one from the beaches of Fiji. However, it was hard to hear with all the waves crashing. It wasn't quite up to our sound quality, so we decided to nix it. And then I got busy with a little bit of travel and work. So, we are back. As always, I am joined by Tall Dan, gangly, less good looking, devilishly handsome, slightly more portly Dan.
What would really soften that blow for yourself?
I'm hefty. And in the middle is the young, good looking Jess. Don't call him Jesse because that's not his actual name, Clark. And we're going to be talking today about some wearables and how we implement them with our fitnessers, our sports performance athletes, and our weightlifters alike. All wearables have their place. Some things are good, some things are bad, but we're going to kind of wade through some of that with you. So, Jess? Oh, we also have a special soundboard today. Hold on. It's been 3 weeks, so I'm a little rusty. First of all, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Killcliff, as always, and Nike Weightlifting. If you go to athleteperformancesolutions.com and enter LiftLab20, you will get 20% off your order. Thanks to our man, Travis Fox. Without further ado, Jess with the soundboard. This is going to get very FM DJ real quick, and we'll get going here on some wearables.
All right, so I think the number one thing you got to think about when we talk about wearables is what are we trying to do? So what are we tracking? And so the biggest ones are HRV, heart rate, sleep, calories burned and consumed, steps, sometimes hormones. When it comes to weightlifting, we're looking at bar path as well as force production. So those are the big things that we want to track. And then there are quite a few different trackers out there. So we're talking about the Whoop app, Garmin, Suunto, Polar, Omega Wave.
And these are brands.
Apple Watches.
All of them.
Yeah. Pretty much anyone that has a piece of fitness tech can track something.
All right, and let's back it up, Jess, just a little bit. So first of all, what's HRV?
Heart rate variability.
Okay. Why is it important?
It usually it tells you your daily strain after you have a baseline.
Okay.
And it's important because if you don't know how stressed your body is, you may not have a great training session.
For sure. All right. What's the Omega Wave?
The Omega Wave is Joel Jamieson's version of HRV.
Wrong.
Wrong?
That is Val.
He did. So
This is Bioforce?
Bioforce.
would you like to explain the Omega Wave, Dan? Because I think we first heard about these in 2008,
Dan,
10,
that was
something
back
like that.
when
in the day.
my bench record actually counted. The statute of limitations hasn't expired, so my brain isn't super refreshed on that. But I do recall Joel talking about him basically, I won't say reverse engineering, but gathering some data from Omega Wave to produce his version of a heart, which was Bioforce HRV, which evaluated heart rate variability. And just to clarify on what is HRV, okay, so everybody hears heart rate variability and think, it's just going to take my heart rate. It is, when you're talking about being in a rested, relaxed state, it is a good idea that your heart rate is variable. Meaning you don't want a steady thump, 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 thump heart rate. You want it to be more irregular because that is going to basically be signaling that your body is at a relaxed state and there's no consistent stressor that has to be dealt with. Whereas if your body is like consistently beating at 80 beats a minute, it's experiencing some sort of stress that's requiring it to work that hard. So heart rate variability is not just simple as what's your resting heart rate. It has an algorithm in play that dictates what are the microseconds in between that quote-unquote 60 beat per minute heart rate.
And to give people the visual, right? They've all probably seen the lines, the down, up, down, right? With the spike in the middle, like when you look at the heart rate sign. So it measures the RR interval, which is simply when you have those two big spikes, like that's the R portion, and it's going to measure the variability between those two peaks. So a higher one is in a more parasympathetic, relaxed, rest and digest, if you will. And then a lower one, or a lower variability, is going to be a more sympathetically toned, a little bit more stressed out, if you will.
So, Jess, why is heart rate variability tracking good for your average person who wants to get more healthy and fit?
Because at the end of the day, it is telling you whether or not you should go 100% or more. Like, you're thinking about intensity of training when it comes to whether or not I should have a heavy session or should I have a light session. Am I going to overtrain myself? Because at the end of the day, we know adaptations come if you kind of stress the body, but you also need a bit of recovery to, allow those adaptations to occur.
Sure. Do you think that HRV is a good thing, Dan?
I do. Sometimes, so like I use Bioforce to back it up, right? I used Bioforce for about 2 years straight at one point. Back before you had the Bluetooth, right? So like
you had to plug it into your phone.
So I had to plug in the receiver.
I remember that.
Right? So you got the receiver from China, and like you plugged it into your phone, and you had to sit there in your chest, and blah blah blah. And like there are some things that it's going to tell you. I found out that like mine, on average, because I was very fit at the time, was like rather high.
So that wasn't even a humble brag. That was just a brag.
Right? Yeah. I mean, like it was like high.
Is your statute of limitations ran out on that fitness?
No, because like deep down, it's still inside me. Like, I still got the heart to do it. Okay.
Literally.
Right. So like I still got the will. Right. But for example, when I went to the dentist one time and I had to have cavities filled or some sort of like major thing going on, right? Like I woke up the next day and I took it and it was like plummeting, right? Like way down to the red, like literally cut in half of what it normally is. Now, do I need a device to tell me that I don't feel well? Not necessarily, but it's going to put a number to it so that it's really about the things you may not sense, right? So let's say you're a little stressed out about your job, or a little kind of stressed out about your relationship with somebody, or like your mortgage or whatever. It's going to pick up those little things that you may not feel, but like they're going to add up over time. So it's going to add over, so it's going to add up like the cumulative stressors of the body.
And I would say that, I just wrote, it's actually going up today on the social medias for Barbend, but a little piece about technology and in training. And obviously that one was geared more towards weightlifting, but using HRV technology for me and something I've implemented with our athletes in the past. To be honest, sometimes I implemented it well, sometimes I implemented it poorly. I think early on I took it more like as a stop, pass, or go type approach to training, and now I think I step back and look at it as more as like a large scale version and trend over like how to conduct some of these training. So for example, most of them are on a color system. It's like green, yellow, red. Okay,
It's pretty
very stoplight
yield,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. There's no roundabout. Okay, and so obviously red's bad, yellow's just like and green's like you need to fucking get after it. Well, instead of like using it as the stoplight method, I would just kind of look at the big pictures. And if it was yellow, I would now think of that as, well, if we don't actively take some steps here to promote some recovery, we're probably going to be trending in the negative direction. And red is more like, you need to get a hold on this because this is starting to go bad fast. And a lot of times you'll see with that kind of data that does come back, right? And once you get them back like on the right track, they can recover, and you don't necessarily have to cease training, right? And I think that's to bring it back to your fitness point. If your goal is to get fit, you've got to move. You've got to have intensity. We're just maybe looking to do it in a way that doesn't grind you into the cellar and have you hurt.
Yeah, so that's like, we've been implementing heart rate training with our fitness group, and we use the Polar H7, and they have their own like category thing where they have like the gray, the blue, green, orange, and red. Each one of those pertains to a heart rate intensity. And again, we usually try and program where it's like, all right, we see you're redlining, bring down the intensity a little bit, try and make this maintainable and sustainable. Or, hey, we really need you to go all out on this 10-second effort. And, we do keep that in mind as we go through, day to day, week to week. But then another thing that we need to look at, not only just when it comes to intensity, but then also the different companies have their own product that essentially measure the same thing, right? And each one of those has a different algorithm,
a different take on
it. So now the question is, what does that mean? Is it accurate? Should you put all your, trust in just HRV alone?
Sure. So, I think the newest one out is Whoop. We've done a lot of stuff with them. Bioforce HRV and the Omega Wave were kind of what I would call first gen.
Mm-hmm.
They were kind of first gen, looking at heart rate variability as an indicator for performance and ability to perform that task on that day. With Whoop and what's the ring? Ovu? We haven't used that one, but it's a ring you wear. Ovu, Aura ring. Okay, so those the fancy mood ring and Whoop are designed to be worn 24/7. So whereas before you were taking your HRV measurement, it's like a 2-minute test at a fixed point in the time. With the newer ones that are out there, it's a 24-hour monitoring that also indicates sleep data based on heart rate as well. So again, for me, it's if you wake up in the morning, you usually can tell if you slept like shit. Right? You really don't need a piece of data to tell you that, or a wearable to tell you that. But if you step back and look at it over, the course of a week or the course of a month, it's like big picture data that could kind of indicate or drive some of, it could indicate some past behaviors that were shitty, and it could drive some behaviors moving forward that try to get you to think about how you sleep and how you perform consistently.
With one of our athletes, when, she eats cleaner, quote unquote, right, she's more in the green, she's more recovered. That makes sense, right? It's like an obvious thing you should do, but it gives you a number to pull with it and be like, hey, I've been taking care of my body, but my body knows.
I eat shit food, I have a shit performance.
Exactly.
I see the correlation here.
Mm-hmm. Pretty easy.
So would you say mood and just general habits outweigh that most of the time? So if Buddy Morris of the Arizona Cardinals, he says when his players come in and they're quiet and they're lethargic, he doesn't train them hard. He goes through a regen session. But if they can't stop talking and they're messing around with one another, he's he knows that they're ready to go.
Yeah.
Well, it's the whole thing. This is a good point because everybody in the strength and conditioning, health and fitness field, they talk about coaching is part art, part science, right? Well, if you've been doing it for a long time, you probably can lean a little bit more on that art, right? Mm-hmm. So that experience of seeing what's going on. If you're a new coach, you might need to rely a little more on science because you're not really in tune with it. Buddy Moore's been coaching people longer than I've been alive. He obviously has a really good track record. He's probably pretty in tune to what the athletes are doing. Mm-hmm. He may not need technology. He might have it as a backup plan, or if they want to get some longitudinal data. I don't really know what the Arizona Cardinals situation is, but it's kind of the same idea. Along those lines, we had a test. Well, first of all, let's back up because a lot of times when people come in and if they're elite performing athletes at the gym, they understand this. So if they're an elite weightlifter, if they're an elite sport athlete, they understand monitoring sleep patterns and training and behavior patterns and things like that. But the average person that comes in here just looking to get healthier and more fit, i.e. the bulk of of people, they may not understand why they would or why they should subscribe to this kind of data. Right? And I would say that it would be a good thing to do so you can get a barometer for the things I need you to feel. Mm-hmm. Right? But asking somebody that hasn't committed to their health and fitness as a lifestyle and then to commit to this to an additional cost and more pain in the ass type stuff, they may not want to do it.
Right.
So.
Well, but it's going to help them draw those correlations between, if they're trying to lose weight and they're not sleeping and they come in and they can't perform correctly, you can easily see, based on their performance. So like for them, it's kind of like walking them through the process, kind of like with our weightlifter example earlier, when like they eat better, like they perform better. So like trying to work that person into those habits where they can become like at least a good exerciser for the day, right? Where they can come in, they can maximize their time here and then maximize their time out of here as well. So it's trying to walk them through the baby steps. That's where there's got to be a little plan laid out, right, for them, and or like the teaching moments, right, of the coaching, like to work through that. Part of I think the messiness when we get into this is, you know, we talked about Buddy Morris, right, where he can tell, right, and like most of the old school coaches or the ones that just never had this stuff, that's the only thing they had,
Right.
So there has to be this mix as like a younger coach, which we all are, where we've seen a lot of people come in, but you know, like haven't been in the game that long. We're like, we need some of this data, but we can't have our head down, just saying, oh well, you came in and you were at 50% today.
Right.
Right?
So let's not do shit.
Right. You like still need to watch them walk through the door, and like you need this mix. And I think that's where maybe the schools or the people kind of clash, where they have this like oh, the old people don't use any data. And then the old people are like, well, the young kids, you know, like they got their nose, you know, like in the screen, and they're not actually paying attention to anything. So there's got to be this balance in this mix of how we look at, you know, like people.
Yeah, and my problem with it would be just as the elder statesman of the table and a man with children, is that like part of the problem is like if I went on, so for example, last night I got home from here pretty late. I was, you know, doing a bunch of shit, and I ended up going to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, I got up at 4:30 in the morning, right? Well, what do you think my HRV is going to be?
Probably not.
It's probably going to be shit, okay? And I want to train today because I've had this back injury I'm trying to get rid of. I'm still going to train, all right? But I know that, so like for me, that's not necessarily an option. And because my schedule is what it is, right? It's busy. It's relatively unpredictable. My schedule has a real natural way of giving me days off, like days off of training. And so if I were to get, have an HRV score or a Whoop score that was like real low and suggested that you not train, I might go 2 or 3 days without training. And I don't know that that's necessarily a scenario that I would want for somebody like myself who's just trying to get healthier. Because you need to train. But my HRV is going to be low because I haven't fucking slept, right? But my body's like, it can handle some stuff.
So are you saying that like a lot of these technologies and trackers, they don't account for like outside factors?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really hard. Like you could go, when you're talking about like being healthy and being fit, like Mother Nature, your job, like once you're an adult, okay? And when you have kids and you have a business, and you have a job, like it just life has a real good way of giving you days off of training, right? If you have kids, like your kids are going to get sick. You're going to have to miss workouts, stay at home, go to the doctor with them. Like you're going to get days where you don't train that might have been, you know, scheduled training days or scheduled off days or whatever. So if you take these if you take the apps and you just like live by it, right? And like you live and die by what the app says. The app says I can't do shit today, or it says I can do shit today. You know, then you're going to get yourself in trouble because what will happen is there's going to be a day that's green, and your kids are going to be staying home from school, and you're just going to be able to do, you know, push-ups in the garage, right? So you're going to get a heavy training effect, right? So I think it for me, it's a definite. I like data. I like the big picture of it. I want to use it with caution, and I think it tells you a lot of really, really good stuff. Something like Whoop and HRV, I would wear it for a month, 2 months before even considering what the data said. And I would just try to train. My goal would be, I'm going to train 6 days a week.
Now, does Whoop has an input section where you can write like your own, like, hey,
Correct.
This is, even though I slept like crap, this is how I feel.
Yes.
So that's one of the first few that actually accounts for outside variables, I would say.
Yes. So it has an algorithm that lets you rate your perception of how you feel. And I can't, so I used to do Whoop pretty regularly until I lost the battery. Yeah. So I mean, I would say
there's another problem.
Yeah, right.
Talked about.
Right. This is a tiny ass battery. You know, I don't know, it's $15 every time you lose it. But I had it for like a solid 6 months or a year, so I got pretty dialed into it. Like I could tell you when I woke up whether I was going to be yellow or red or whatever. And most of it's like common sense shit. And I got this really unique autoimmune disease where my body tries to kill itself. So there's a lot of times where I'd have these real bad, we'll just call them flare-ups, and I'd just be red for like days the fuck on end. And the only thing that would help me feel better would be to train and just feel like I wasn't being a total dead piece of shit, right? So that's where you got to be careful with like data-driven outcomes and data-driven performance. I think it's much better. And just to tie it in, if you go back to like, there's all these Russian training manuals, like the Russian weightlifting manual of 1987, the Soviet preparing for the Olympics program. Those manuals were retrospective. They were just recording what they were doing. And they just happened to go to the Olympics and win like a whole bunch of fucking medals. So they're like, oh, here's the plan to do it. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not how they approach solving the problem, right? It just worked out.
Then I think there's some like really interesting parts in there where they have like tests of their own that are on this, where it's like, how do you know if your athlete's ready to train? There's one in one of those manuals where they talk about bicep firmness, where each day, right. For the visual, for like the video listeners, they just got a treat.
Yeah,
okay? That's like a bonus on video only.
I love over YouTube.
It's like you ever seen a swan appear out of nowhere, right? But this is one thing that they could do. Like I wrote an article where like the Turkish get up can be one of those things as well, because it's a total body strength test. We still, like people will like fight over this because it's really kind of silly, but like when you talk about like a grip test, right? Like you go in and like you measure your grip each day, and you can see it. Yeah. There's a number there, and when that number falls, you've got a down day. Now, still the same advice would be to go do what you were going to do. Then tomorrow, if you start trending downward,
consider maybe, something else, right?
Maybe you need a lighter load. So like even though like you have probably like a 5% recovery score today, you can still get out there and roll around, kind of crawl around, maybe ride the bike a little bit.
Just not a max deadlift day.
Right. So something just like you're not going to go do Fran right now, even though you might. Pull-ups.
But what about, so we hear this.
Or my hands one time. Pissed me off.
So we hear this like all the time with our weightlifters. So they come in and like, man, the bar feels heavy today, right? And it's either a 15 or a 20 kilo bar. And these are people that can, snatch body weight.
A lot more than that.
And they come in and they're like, all right, this bar feels really heavy today. But they somehow end up either PRing or having a really good 90+% session. Is that because they're relying too much on the data, or they just don't understand the physiology behind it?
So, I mean, so here's kind of, Omega Wave has all these components. We didn't really dive into that, but back when I was like really interested in knowing, what can I think of Val's last name? The guy that made Omega Wave.
Well, I don't know.
It's killing me. But anyway, back when they were like doing this thing, they had all these variables, and they were trying to say, all right, when you have this percentage decrease in power output, you need to not perform and this, that, and the other, okay? And so they were doing like a vertical jump test was one of the tests I remember, and this was when we were at the greatest university ever. And they said, okay, when you see a 10% decrease in vertical jump, you need to cut training, okay? As a pretest, they're saying, all right, if you come in and on Monday you jump 30 inches, 30-inch vertical, and you do that same test on Tuesday, when it's 27 inches, you're going to cut training. Now, I've been around, you've been around, Dan, you've been around, I don't know how many hundreds of athletes. Do you think there's any athlete, football player specifically, that's who we were testing, in the U.S., that has a 30-inch vertical, okay, that couldn't get to 27 unless they were on like any day of the week, assuming they didn't have any leg injury or like, I don't know.
Squatted super heavy the day before.
Not even. Because it's a one-time effort, right?
I mean, is that a warm-up?
Exactly.
Like after warm-up, is that cold?
It's basically
cold walking the gym?
It's basically, yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's just it. And it's a one-time test. And so my answer to you, Jess, would be like you're evaluating the depth of your tank, okay? And sometimes there's athletes that don't need a lot to have a real high performance, especially for a short intensity duration sport, right?
Mhm.
Like weightlifting specifically is fueled on caffeine and glucose, and it gets you pretty fucking far
Yeah.
if there's enough in the system. Okay, now you're not gonna be able to do it. You're not gonna be able to do it real long.
Nope.
Okay, but could you hammer out 3 heavy singles close to your max? Probably. That's why my all-time best snatch was after a night of drinking, a leftover piece of KFC cold out of the fridge, and a black cup of coffee. And Dan German watched some dude roll a fucking world record on a donut and a cup of coffee, right? So those are the things that like you have to take into consideration, like when you're evaluating those kinds of datas, right? But I want to segue a little bit. We talked a lot about heart rate variability and the difference of using heart rate monitoring while you're training, because this would be the piece of technology I think that everybody should have while training and actually like give it a look.
These are probably my favorite.
I agree, and it's like time tested, very
like 1,000%, and it is the best thing to use when you're trying to accomplish 2 goals. One, you're trying to get your data, okay, in a 0 to 1 step process. Okay, let's just remember that. That number does not have to go to the phone. It doesn't have to go into an equation, whatever. It senses it on your body. It's on the TV.
It shows
Okay.
you what it is.
0 to 1 step is one of the things that people kind of like miss in all this, because it'll give you a lot of numbers, but it gives you, it might take you a little bit of work to get there.
Sure.
Number 2, it lets you make a decision off that number in real time, right? Like if you get test results, let's say you test every single athlete in here on X, Y, and Z, right? You get 4 tests. You got to go down on your computer. You gotta put those in a spreadsheet, right? You got to crank out the results. Then you got to make a decision. No one has time for that, right? You need to be able to make a decision right now.
For sure.
Okay? So like when that number's on the board, boom, you can see it and say, you go ahead and speed up, you go ahead and slow down. Easy.
And tying it into, let's go with fat loss as the goal, right? So the goal is to lose weight, to get in better shape. You get up, you take your HRV, and it's red, you're in the toilet, you're in the tank, you're not supposed to go balls to the walls today. So you show up, you're wearing your heart rate monitor, and instead of not doing anything and maybe reverting into old habits or I don't know, just laying at home eating potato chips, I don't know. Instead, you choose to do a workout that's heart rate controlled, where you're in the more like, let's say, aerobic capacity type zone, where you're still building, your endurance, you're promoting recovery, and you're not necessarily taxing your muscles to a point where they can't recover, right? You're stimulating your heart rate to a point of where you can promote blood flow, where you can burn calories, where you can improve your aerobic capacity, so that when you come back tomorrow and your HRV is green, you can have your red day where you try to throw up.
And think about the colors at which that is. It's usually like a green or a blue when you're in those zones. Very calming colors, so they're a regeneration, right? It is something that's not a super intense workout, but it is controlled, so you can get a little bit of training, which is going to stimulate recovery.
For
Right,
sure.
right. That's like probably one of the biggest things that we need to remember. No. Nope. So Tori's just gonna hit the restart button.
Uh-huh.
Dan.
Let me
Dan,
take a second.
you almost self-destructed the podcast. Dan.
Well, hold on.
Good thing I'm
Our
here to save
normal Brian
can we call that epic fail real quick?
hit the soundboard. I almost paused, and apparently that's the wrong button to hit. Our normal man, Brian, Pump Action Pimp 86 on the Instas,
Did that shut off?
is
yet?
not
Sorry.
here today.
Did it already go off?
We're back up.
Okay, we're almost there at
40.
30 minutes. Intern Tori
has to hit. She has one job to hit a button.
Yeah,
I almost ruined the job.
You almost ruined the job. It was like in the movies when like they go for the big red button underneath the glass container. That was like. Now we're back. And we're back.
All right,
see,
we hit the button.
You were just gonna Kim Jong Un the whole world all of a sudden.
You can't make a joke about nuclear holocaust on this podcast. Where can you? All right. So moving on from the heart rates, we know that heart rates are kind of
got me in the red there for a second.
the thing. I actually think this is a trend that you'll just continue to see, even if it is with people using them with CrossFit. At some point, they'll realize. The CrossFit community will realize, and I think they already do, that there's a lot of value there and a lot of value add when it even comes to developing your competitive fitness game. I think that the last point here I wanted to kind of touch on or talk about a little bit was video. All right, so videoing what you're doing and how that has a positive or negative effect to what you do. We can use some examples for weightlifting. It's really easy. There's some examples for fitness that are really easy. But video is not going anywhere. Instagram, probably not going anywhere unless somebody develops the newest, latest, and greatest. And so those sort of things are kind of becoming usable technology in training because you video everything and then you post it to your audience, which is a bunch of strangers you probably wouldn't even like if you met. I'm just kidding. I have no idea. You probably love them all.
Well, you better post and say that you love them all.
And then they're going to criticize what you do. And you're either going to accept, reject, eternalize. I don't know. You're going to do something with that information that they give you. Okay? And it works like this. We'll use lifting as an example. Is really the most straightforward thing. I'm going to video my lift. Okay, now first of all, before I video my lift, I'm going to set up my camera or have one of my teammates or one of my coaches video my lift, which may or may not disrupt what they're doing in their training or their coaching. So, for example, we got 30 people lifting tonight, Dan Brown's coaching, and all of a sudden somebody wants their lift videoed and they take 10 minutes to set up. Okay, this is a disruption to like everybody that's training. So that's not good. Because that kind of puts a damper on everybody else's training, the coach's attention, that sort of shit. Then when you video the lift, make or miss, you're going to analyze it. And you're going to overanalyze it. And you're going to slow it down. Okay? And you're going to slow the snatch down. And you're going to see every single flaw you made along the way. And you go, oh my gosh, the bar got way out far in front. Okay? And that tells you absolutely nothing. Right? It does not tell you why the bar got way out in front. Right? To further complicate the matter, because you were worried about videoing it and posting it to Instagram and hoping you have a PR post on Wednesday night on Instagram to get your 100 likes, you were in no point in time were in tune or engaged with your body during the lift. You have no idea what's going on. Right? You're a distracted driver. Right? You're a drunk driver at this point. Right? And to make it worse, sometimes we have people drinking while doing this. Okay, so there's a lot of things that can go really, 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 really wrong.
Sugary beverages. Or maybe bubbly beverages.
Correct. And
which is another thing to worry about.
It's all of it.
So now you can't focus on anything.
You're ruined. So when learning occurs, there's a certain level of concentration and focus that has to take place on the task at hand. When you interrupt that chain of focus, you interrupt your body's ability to learn. I don't care how advanced you are. And I'll use the example of if you talk to Ilya, to Klokov, to Demos, to even and you say, oh, those guys were on drugs. Okay. Even the people that are most recently at the OTC when it was still going. Zygmunt had a really firm policy. They couldn't have headphones in, no music, no video while they were doing the Olympic lifts. Now, when they went and did pulls and shit like that was less technical, they could do it. When you're at training camp, for example, we talked about Demos. Demos preparing for the Olympics would be like 6 or 9 months in a training camp, away from his family, kids, And the whole idea, Klokov the same way, the whole idea is that you go away and you focus, right? You focus on this one thing, and you try to be great at this one thing, and you're totally in tune with it. Okay. Now, Zygmunt, would he film lifts? Yes. There's plenty of pictures of him filming lifts, right, on the iPad. We have a replay system set up here. We don't use it as much as we should, but it's set up so that we tape delay lifts. It goes up on a screen in front of the lifts. Having a coach video lifts can be a good thing, right? You can sit down and go with your coach. Now, see, this is when the bar comes out in front, but that was because you did this. See yourself doing this, don't do this.
So you still have to keep the big picture.
Well, but that's like your data input into your system with your data output, right? Does that make sense? Right? So like if you're just looking at the data input and like you're not and like you're just observing what's happening, right? You're seeing all the numbers of your HRV that's going into the algorithm, but not have no idea how to get it out.
For sure.
Right. So that's why you need the coach. Like that's the part of it. And as far as the bar path thing goes, right? Like, because there's a lot of bar path analyzers, right? Yeah. It's like that still doesn't tell you how to correct it.
No, it doesn't tell you what the fix is,
no,
right? So at some point, like you can't. We were talking about this earlier this morning. You can't rely on a blog.
Mm-hmm.
You can't rely on Instagram. Like you can get programs, but at some point you actually need a coach.
Yeah, that human element.
Yeah,
that we're talking about.
Yeah. Even like maintaining distance coaching for a long time is hard to go to a high level, right? You have to have a coach and you have to have some guidance because at some point the problems get a little more complicated, a little harder to fix, require a little more attention to detail, might even require some immediate feedback. But yeah. And, all those things, do I think that, again, I talked about this in detail in Bar Bend, so I'll plug that article, but are there some good things and some good ways to use social media and video and things like that? Yeah. Do I think you should do it while you're training? No. I think you should do it when you're done, when you're at home, when you're not asking somebody else to interrupt what they're doing to video your lift or promote your thing. Now, the caveat would be, all right, coach, tonight I'm going for a PR. Would you mind keeping an eye on me when I start doing that? Would you video this lift? Yeah. Or, hey, coach, I'd like to review some video with you about my lifts. Can we do that? Yeah, okay.
When you're done training.
When you're done training, exactly. You don't need to video every lift, right? We understand, first of all, if you're videoing every lift and you're making a different mistake every lift, we still just need to fix the ones like the most crucial because we're going to fix them all once, right? It doesn't take a bunch of lifts to see what somebody's doing wrong. So, and the same thing applies to, you're like, oh, how would video apply to fitness and things like that? It's the exact same. It's a tool. I've worked before with like gait analysis or runners, and so that was a tool where videoing was like really, really important.
We do it in rowing all the time.
Exactly. So you need to look at these things, but you're not like stopping practice to talk about the video and things like that. It's like, when you watch, you're not watching in the NFL, you're not running a play, then watching game film of that play, and then running another play and watching game film of that play, right? It's like you have to be in it, trying to correct it, and then talk about the big picture of things that you want to fix, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And, fitness is a little bit different, although I'll say this, like, if you want to really see, like, some big changes, like, think about not messing with your phone while you're doing fitness, right? It's the same thing. Feel yourself doing a kettlebell swing. Feel yourself doing a muscle up. Feel yourself doing, like, try to feel what you're doing, right? And I think that part of that staying engaged also prevents injuries, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of times they just happen when you're just not focused, when you're dicking around. Most people get hurt lifting weights when they're warming up. Because they're talking to somebody, they're like, oh, it's 70 kilos, it's not going to hurt me. And it lands on them funny, and dumb shit happens. Because of lack of focus.
Well, I think that's, part of these numbers that we see is like, is it that's a perfect point. Is it like a physiological fix or is it a mechanical fix? Right? So and it's always a little bit of both. But, if somebody is like, oh, I always get hurt because I always push myself too hard. It's like, well, like the number on the screen, let's say you're in the red because you're always pushing hard and you have crappy technique, right? So now you're inefficient, you're like overworking, your system's exhausted, and instead of, doing a good rep, you do a bad rep, and next thing you know, you tear your shoulder, right? So, like, it would be better, like, to back you off and then to fix the mechanical and the physiological effect.
Sure.
And that's like a pretty simple fix. And like the physiology is sometimes going to match up with the mechanics. So if you run horribly, right, or if you like don't have a good rowing stroke and you're not efficient, then like your physiology is not going to adapt. So like some of the biggest changes and some of the biggest improvements with like the endurance athlete is they're not so much physiological past a point, because everybody can work, right? But they're going to be the mechanical and like the mechanical efficiency as you become, like the top, 5% of the world.
Sure.
Right. So, like these are always good things to remember. Probably like my favorite piece like of technology and all this is like the Garmin aspect, where like you may go for a run, you may do a workout, and as soon as you connect to Wi-Fi, it uploads to a program like the Training Peaks, which I think is a great one. And guess what? You never see the data. You never have to worry about it. You just put your you never have to touch it. Like you go and put your monitor out, you go out there, you do your work, and then you come back in, and guess what? Like bing, nothing, right? 0 things. Your coach gets it, and then if you go to your coach, like, coach, I'm really tired from yesterday's workout, and your coach calls up your score and says, yeah, you worked really hard.
You did a bunch of shit.
Right?
And I think there's some research coming out too. Just one last point here, and we'll wrap this up. But there's some research coming out now talking about this mind-body connection. Okay, and they're like basically saying with your mind, you can start to manipulate the physiological changes of your body. Okay, and this like sounds like pretty insane. Like, oh, if I just think about being in shape, I'll be in shape. If you go back to watching Pumping Iron, right? Where Arnold, obviously he's taking D-ball, like it's what he was doing, but he's talking about just concentrating so hard on his muscles tearing and like seeing them and feeling them tear. And C.T. Fletcher, like as wild as he gets sometimes, I command you to grow, right? It's the same idea that you're having this mind-body connection to what you're doing, and those people are not like out with their phones being disconnected from the activity that's going on, right? They're like getting after it, getting in the zone, doing those things. So I don't want anybody to lose, any bit of that. If you get a chance to read Unplugged by Andy Galpin
and Brian
McKenzie, and another guy, White, it's a good book. It's very balanced on health and fitness, but it just talks about this idea of like technology is a good thing, just understand how you're using it, so you're not letting it take away from your performance.
Technology should enhance your life, not take away from it.
Absolutely.
Precisely.
Gang, that is a wrap. Thank you for joining us on episode 22. We will be back next time.